How to have a healthy disagreement. One of the first things to understand about disagreements is what causes them in the first place. If you understand the word precipitation, an example would be what causes it to rain. You know, the ocean, the vapors go up, they fill clouds, they come out over the land, and the temperature of the air over land at some point causes them to drop the water, and we call that rain. But the water going up into the clouds, the moisture that fills the clouds, that's called precipitation. So when this happens, when this moisture goes up and begins to fill the clouds, you can bet your bottom dollar at some point along the way there's going to be rain. Well, disagreements are the same way. And by the way, it's not a matter of if you have disagreements in a marriage, it's a matter of when, because they're going to happen. It's actually pretty unrealistic to think that you're going to live without disagreements. They are going to happen. So what precipitates them? What causes them to happen? Disagreements arise when, and I'm going to give you 5 different examples of precipitation for disagreements. Disagreements arise when we cannot control a situation. If that's the case, there's going to be a disagreement. Number 2 is our rights are threatened. You threaten my rights. That's going to precipitate a disagreement. Our self-esteem is threatened. Others do not value us. And the 5th one is we fear change. So think about those. Any one of those settings is going to turn into a disagreement. And it's important to understand next that there are 3 potential outcomes to every disagreement. The first is lose-lose. The second one is win-lose. And the third possibility is a win-win. Now, lose-lose, nobody wants that one. Nobody likes a lose-lose disagreement. A win-lose, unfortunately, there are a lot of people who are satisfied with this one, as long as I'm the one that's winning. Yeah, you got to win last time, so I'm winning this one. And that's where a lot of couples are stuck. You know, I want to win this disagreement, and I want to win so bad I don't care if you lose. But it's a very, very unhealthy outcome to a disagreement. A win-win, believe it or not, is possible every single time. Now, I know that may be hard to believe, but it's the truth. A win-win is possible every time there's a disagreement. So no 2 people will agree on everything. Married couples are destined to have many disagreements over the course of time. As a matter of fact, if you examine your marriage, you will probably find that you disagree in patterns, repeating the same disagreement with a new set of circumstances. Now, that is true, I think, in every couple we have ever counseled. If I could be a little fly on the wall of their home and just watch them for a couple of days, I could actually codify their disagreement patterns. I could say, oh, when John does this, oh, Susie does this every time. And when Susie does this, oh, John comes back like this. I could actually map out that pattern and show it to them, and probably even show them how often the cycle repeats itself. In some cases, it may be 3 times a day. In other cases, it may be once a week. But there is often a pattern and a cycle to our disagreements. Let me give you an example. If a husband thinks that his wife is too controlling, that's his mindset about his wife, a disagreement may ensue when she presents him with a honey-do list that he thinks is unreasonable. On another occasion, a disagreement explodes when his wife insists on eating Chinese and he's craving Mexican. It's the same disagreement with a different set of circumstances. Think about it for a second. The first one is that he wakes up on a Saturday and he thinks, I've got a day off, I've got some time to myself, and his wife hands him a honey-do list. When he takes a look at it, he thinks, great, there goes my day. I'm not going to have any fun. I'm not going to be able to do anything I wanted to do today because of this list. And then the disagreement ensues. But the real root of that is that he feels his wife is too controlling. So in the next occasion, they're leaving church and he's craving Mexican and she says, we're going to go eat Chinese food. They have a disagreement over that. But you see, it's the same issue. Again, he feels like she's being too controlling. It just the same argument with two different sets of circumstances. So some couples will come in and say, we argue about everything. We argue all the time. Well, it's probably not many different arguments. It's probably the same one or two or maybe three. But in most cases, I would say one or two arguments just coming out in different sets of circumstances. So in many cases, one spouse has a stronger personality that dominates the smaller disagreements, but even the most passive spouse will eventually jump into fight mode. Now, this I understand personally because in our relationship, Evie is the stronger personality. She's a director. I mean, she wants to plan things out. Well, I'm pretty detailed too, but I'm more laid back. So I'm the more passive person. And what I would do is I would just let it build and build and build because unfortunately I handled things with passive aggression. And I would just not participate in the conversation. I would just shut down. And that was my way of handling it. But she would still win. So I would just let that build up inside of me until one day it would be a very, very small disagreement. But all of that, maybe a month of that would come out. It's like shaking up a Coke bottle and then spraying. It's just like all the pressure comes out at one time. So even the most passive or laid-back spouse will eventually come into fight mode. So if disagreements are inevitable, how can a couple minimize their occurrence and resolve them effectively? The first step in minimizing and resolving disagreements is to head them off at the pass. You say, Paul, that sounds very simple, but I don't know if we can do that. You can if you will follow these steps. First of all, once you've identified a pattern, sit down and discuss it and develop a plan to handle every subsequent occurrence. Now, this conversation has to happen when everything is good between the two of you. So don't do this at a time when your emotions are running high and you're upset with each other. Do this at a time when you're calm and everything is happy and good. Just sit down and say, okay, look, let's try this exercise. Let's take a look at our disagreements and see if we can identify the pattern and come up with a plan to head them off at the pass. And there are 3 steps to do this. The first one is agree on what the disagreement looks like, its common characteristics. So for us, I could identify that there was a pattern. Every time Evie said something to me like that, it upset me because I felt like she was controlling me and I never got to have my way, or she never considered what I might be feeling about something. So it was easy for us to identify the problem that I had with her that caused disagreements. And then we also identified a pattern for another disagreement, and that was that because of her nature of wanting to map things out and get them done on a time frame, there was a huge problem on her side because I had a tendency to procrastinate. So she would get very furious at me because she would ask me to do something that seemed very simple, maybe, pick something up out of the yard and put it away or whatever. And she would feel like that I was never going to do it. So then she would push harder, which caused more problems on my side because I thought, there she goes, bossing me around again, nagging me about this thing. And I'm ashamed to admit it, but, I got to the point where I thought, as long as she's trying to control me or trying to push me to do this, guess what? I ain't going to do it. Isn't that childish? It's very childish, but it's true. As long as she's trying to force me to do it, I ain't going to do it. Now, when she backs off, and it can be my idea to go out in the yard and move that thing and put it away, then I'll do it. Again, it's that macho thing. It's that need to feel like I'm in control of my own life. But it was a vicious cycle that caused all kinds of disagreements and arguments. So we very calmly talked through this and identified that those were two of our patterns for disagreements. So step 2 is agree on how one can notify the other when the problem begins. Now, this doesn't have to be an elaborate code system. For us, it was very simple. On my side, for the pattern that I felt we slipped into when I felt like I was being controlled, we agreed that I would just tell Evie, hey, you're doing it again. I know you don't realize it, but you're putting pressure on me. You're doing it again. So we agreed that that would be my cue to her that she was doing it. And for her, it was to simply ask me, okay, what time will you do that? Pick the thing up out of the yard and put it away or whatever. When will you do that? What time will you do that by? And I would give her the time. So we established our cues, and then the third step is to agree on what will happen to avoid the disagreement. So in this calm discussion, we agreed that the one that sets me off, the controlling thing, that I would say, hey, you're doing it again. And she agreed that when I gave her that cue, she would back off. Even if she didn't feel like she should, she agreed very calmly in this conversation we were having to back off when I gave her that cue. And for mine, I agreed that when she said, when will you do that by? That I would give her a day and a time. So if my job is to do the floors before company comes over, and company's coming over at 6, I would tell her I will have the floors done by 5 o'clock so that they'll have an hour to dry. And we agreed that those would be the steps that we would go through. So if you will go through these steps of identifying the pattern, agree on how one can notify the other that the pattern has started, and agree on what will happen when you give that little notification, you really can head these disagreements off at the pass. But how do you have a healthy disagreement when all efforts of avoidance fail? You can follow the 20 tips that are listed in your couples guide. Now, I'm not going to take the time to go through all 20 of these, but there are several that I want to touch on before we go. And the first is a timeout. If a disagreement gets to a boiling point and you realize that you cannot discuss things calmly and respectfully, call for a timeout. Now, this is a big one. It was a big one for me. I actually loved timeouts, and Evie hated them. I've already told you our temperaments. She's the more out front controlling one. I'm the more laid back and passive one. So you can see how timeouts would be a great thing for me and a frustration to her. But she saw the value of them. If one spouse calls for a timeout, both the husband and wife should separate, preferably to different rooms, until both have cooled down. And then come back together again, discuss the issue respectfully, and of course, do not abuse the use of timeouts. I'll be honest with you and tell you, when I got this little technique, I abused it in the beginning. When I finally did get my thoughts together in the argument, I would attack, argue, and then call for a timeout. It wasn't fair at all. And then I would want to retreat to another room, and really all I was doing was using it to avoid the retaliation or the rebuttal from Evie. So that is an abuse of a timeout. Another abuse of a timeout would be saying, look, I'm getting really heated here. I need a timeout. And then you separate, you go into different rooms, and then you get busy with other things and you don't come back to the issue. You don't come back to the working through the disagreement. That's another abuse of a timeout. A healthy timeout just says, look, I am getting really, really hot, really angry. I need a timeout just to collect my thoughts and think how I want to say this to you. So then you take a timeout, you go into another room, however long it takes you, 10 minutes, 30 minutes, whatever. But you collect your thoughts and you think, okay, remembering our lesson from before about getting to the root of anger, being able to express that blocked goal using feelings, words, eliminating absolutes from your vocabulary, and you come up with a way to say that following the techniques and the principles that we've given you. Then you say, okay, I'm ready to keep talking about this now. You come back together and you very calmly express your feelings about the situation. So a timeout can be very, very productive. It can be abused, and I hope you don't abuse it, but it can be very, very productive. So use timeouts when needed. Silence, listen, silence just does not work. Again, that's passive aggression. And one of the things I didn't understand about passive aggression was the word aggression. I just view it as being, like a little lamb that lays down and wants to keep peace and doesn't want to argue. But actually, it's a form of aggression. So just silence, passive aggression is not a good way to handle things. So don't refuse to talk. Sarcasm. I've already admitted that was one of my biggies. Sarcasm in humor, it can be funny, but sarcasm in an argument is very, very destructive. Don't bully. One of you is going to have a stronger personality and a greater tendency to bully the other. Try and avoid it. Time and place and audiences. Listen, if you've got kids, don't have these disagreements in front of your children. There is something psychological that happens to a child when they see mommy and daddy upset at each other. You talk about a need for security. It is very high on a child's list of emotional needs. And when they see mom and dad upset like that with each other, it rocks their world. So do everything you possibly can not to have those disagreements in front of children. Or in front of anybody for that matter, out in public. It's just not healthy. And by the way, with kids, be especially careful. There were times that we didn't think our kids could hear us arguing. We would try and be mature about this and go into the bedroom and shut the door. And we found out later that Renee, who was old enough to do this, she was about 6 years old at the time. She would actually get out of her bed and come and lay down on the floor and listen through the crack at the bottom of the door. Not because she was being nosy, because she was terrified. She was terrified that mommy and daddy were going to split up and that daddy was going to leave and she wouldn't have a daddy in her house. So be extra careful not to have these disagreements in front of children. Attack the problem, not each other. Volume is a biggie. When one person comes at you with this volume, you have a tendency to want to bring it up to this one. And then they take it higher, and then they take it higher. And then it escalates to the point to where you're screaming. And then that doesn't work, so then you start using swear words. And then that doesn't work, so then you take a cup and you flip it across the room and bust the cup. And then that doesn't work, so you go out the door and you slam the door. Every one of those is an attempt to gain control. And it's not an attempt to gain control because you're a control freak. It's an attempt to gain control because you want to be heard. The other person is not listening. You're not hearing me. So now I'm saying it louder. So now I've got to get your attention and start saying stuff that you don't think I should be saying. Every one of those is an attempt to get control. Remember how to deal with anger. And when somebody comes at you here, instead of taking it up to here, bring it down to here. Use godly wisdom and turn away wrath with a soft word. And then the other person will come down to where you are. So volume is huge. Tone goes right with it. Interrupting. Listen, If there's one thing that amazes me about couples is how they, and I'm including Evie and myself in this example, the way we were years ago, simply cannot resist the temptation to interrupt. As soon as their spouse says something that they don't agree with, they feel like they've got to interrupt to say, now wait a minute, when was the last time I did that? For real, when was the last time? They just can't resist the temptation to interrupt. Do your best to not interrupt. Labeling, avoid name calling. I'm so ashamed to admit it, but I had little pet names that I called Evie that were demeaning and destructive. And it's so easy to slip into because you fulfill that childish, selfish desire to be the winner. So you start throwing around ugly names and label your spouse. Manipulation is a terrible tool to use in a disagreement. Scorekeeping. You know, you've heard the old saying that my wife, when we get upset with each other, she gets historical, not hysterical, historical, because she starts dredging up everything I've ever done in my life and throws it at me. So scorekeeping is not a good tactic. Listen. Don't think ahead of your next rebuttal. Just listen. Affirm each other. Admit guilt. Use I more than the word you. Talk about your feelings and don't try and define your spouse's. So the resolution here would be don't put the matter off to another time. Talk it through until you come to a mutually acceptable resolution. So learn from every disagreement. You can learn from everyone. Grow in wisdom. Let the disagreement teach you something about your spouse, what upsets him or her, and use what you've learned to break the pattern of disagreement. I want to end with Ephesians chapter 4, verse 15. It says, it encourages us to speak the truth. And you say, okay, I got that part. I tell her the truth. I don't have no problem telling him the truth. But it doesn't stop there. It says, speak the truth in love. And that's the part we miss most of the time in disagreements, is speaking the truth in love. And it goes on to say in verse 22, put off concerning your former conduct the old man which grows corrupt according to the deceitful lust, and be renewed in the spirit of your mind, and that you put on the new man which was created according to God in true righteousness and holiness. Therefore, putting away lying, let each of you speak the truth with his neighbor, which would certainly include your spouse. For we are members of one another. Be angry and sin not. Do not let the sun go down on your wrath, nor give place to the devil. So, be renewed in the spirit of your mind. Let these techniques that are productive and always work, let them wash your mind of the old techniques. Put these new techniques in place. Put off your former conduct, the way that you used to handle these disagreements. Put that off and take on this new mind, this new principle, this new technique that is founded in godly wisdom. And you will see it slowly become your new habit. It will become your new knee-jerk reaction. So now every time I get mad, I used to do that, but now I handle it very differently. And it's very natural because I've practiced it so many times. So if you will follow these principles, you will see that it is possible to have a healthy and productive disagreement.